What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all having an amazing day. Now, today I've got for you 3 stories from the subreddit r/TraumatizeThemBack. Now, the great thing about this subreddit is that people who do terrible things see some justice. However, the first story in today's episode is still extremely sad. Without further ado, make sure you are subscribed to my channel for more content like this. We're just a few thousand away from 600,000 subscribers on YouTube. Let's get into the first story. It was bound to happen with how poorly you treated him. My biological mother and I were never really close. I'll even state that she never really loved me, because honestly, my life would have been worse if she did. This was far from the first thing that made me want to go no contact, but I was 10 years old and literally unable to at the time, no matter how much I begged the courts to let me stay with my dad. I don't love much. She pretty much made it hard to love anything, because if she noticed I did, she'd do her best to remove any good meaning I could have had from it. From clothes to TV shows to toys and even highly sentimental gifts from deceased family members, they were ripped away from me because she threw them out and took away everything I had to still remember them. And when I was 10, me and my brother got Goldfish. I think they were a gift from my dad's company, but my dad had cats and was worried about them killing our fish. So, after a talk with our biological mother, she allowed us to take them to her house. Unfortunately, my brother's fish died early on, a mix of stress and my brother not caring about them. But mine were living, and I'd even named them. Mysteriously though, my fish were dying. Flounder had gone first, then Seb, until Stripe was the only one left. I'd cried a lot for them, and I'd become highly protective of Stripe. I'd moved him to my room, I cleaned his tank every day, I changed his water as often as I was suggested to. I even noted down how much food he'd been eating in a day. I'd finally convinced myself that Stripe couldn't mysteriously die if I wasn't around, and I finally left him alone for a bit to play with my siblings. I thought everything would be fine, but then I heard my bio mother shout about how unclean the tank was. I was angry because I'd just cleaned the tank that morning, and I walked over to see my bio mother grabbing his tank. I asked her what she was doing, and she just responded, "I'm cleaning this out since you can't seem to be able to." It had taken me a moment to figure out what she meant by that, but she had a pot of boiling water on the stove and a cup of steaming warm water on the counter. By the time I realized what she was planning, it was too late. She'd grabbed Stripe from his tank and dropped him into the cup of steaming water and started to dump out his tank. I was screaming, crying, and doing whatever I could to stop him from dying, but between the hot water and the sudden drop, there wasn't anything I could have done. I had held him for a long while, just silently crying, while my bio mum was acting like it was unavoidable. I remember her telling me, "It was bound to happen with how poorly you treated him." She finally got fed up with my lack of response and flushed him down the toilet. I hated her for it. I hated her so much. It was 100% avoidable, and I eventually learned she'd been the one killing my fish the entire time. But the entire time she acted like I was in the wrong, like it was my fault that I felt that way. My dad didn't understand, and nobody else cared about a fish. Some even offered replacement fish, which I turned down. I'll also admit that I had been wanting to unalive myself for a while. I'd tried to by drowning on purpose when I was 9, and this had been one of the last straws that I could handle. I wrote a note, one specifically for my bio mum. I don't remember what I'd written, but I do remember that single phrase she loved to repeat about Stripe. It was bound to happen with how poorly you treated him. I can't recall how many times I'd written it down. I can't even mention how many notes I'd written, or which one I eventually put on the bathroom sink, where I'd intended to die at age 11. I didn't die, but only because I didn't want my siblings to be the ones to find my body. I had no clue what to do, just knowing I didn't want to die where they could see. I handed the note to my older sister, and I just started walking. My uncle eventually found me and dragged me back home, but I'd just been so numb. I eventually found out that my bio mum had kept the notes. Yeah, all of them. Years later, she asked me about them and the repeating phrase, demanding an answer that would make her look better in front of her friends. She hadn't expected me to respond the same way that I always would. After you killed my pet and told me it was just bound to happen with how poorly I treated him, it stuck with me just how poorly you treated me. Wow, and there we go. That is the end of the post. OP has just added a little edit on the end to explain who these friends were and how his mum got in contact with them. He says that she met those friends in an online support group for parents with depressed children, and they'd realised they could meet up IRL and did. These people were good, and I spent most of the time already seething because I had to listen to my bio mum lying to them about a whole lot already, not just about me, but my siblings and other family as well. When I got called out to say hi, I was highly disinterested and ready for them to go away so the lying would stop, because my bio mum loved to pretend we were such a nice family when in front of people. I zoned out most of what they said, chiming in with corrections when needed, while getting kicked under the table as my bio mum lied her way through more. Now eventually, the topic of one of the nice mother's sons SHing came up, and she asked me a question about my scars. I did tell her that anything sharp or anything that could be made sharp was enough to harm yourself with, and I gave advice to avoid cans in the house and to check for missing or sticking out nails, etc. And eventually it turned darker into her son's unalive note where he'd cried for help and begged for the pain to go away. That's where my bio mum chimed in, ignoring everything I had to say, and that's when I butted in again. We fought a bit in only the way an abuser can fight with a victim who honestly couldn't care less anymore could fight, and I got sent to my room. Now those friends were there obviously, and they were appalled enough to call CPS, but that went nowhere important. She was later kicked from the support group though, and none of them wanted to be friends with her anymore. And I guess that is the reason as to why OP's mum, bio mum, was asking OP years later, what is it with that note? What did you mean when you said what you said? I think, to be honest, she was just looking for an excuse to go back to those people with and try and rekindle some form of friendship, but they clearly just saw through her. Wow, a terribly sad start to this one. I've just been thinking for a couple of minutes there as to any potential reasons, or if there's any sort of way that I can try and work out as to why this mum might be doing this sort of stuff. As in, like, is it jealousy? Is it just manipulation? Is it kind of like protecting? Is it just whatever? But the only thing I can really think is that she's just like sick in the head. Like, even if you were just trying to be a horrible person, surely you wouldn't go to this length with your own child, right? Something just must be mentally wrong with her. But that is the beauty of this subreddit. At least we got a little bit of revenge. Her friends realizing how horrible she was as you spoke about her, or I guess to her, in front of them. I hope she was just terribly embarrassed and, you know, just her face went white and she just didn't want to be in the room anymore. Because the fact that she has put herself in that situation, in a group of friends, mums, parents, that have depressed children, they're all probably extremely sad and just trying to do whatever they can to help their kid. Yet she must know, I mean, she is clearly sick and twisted, but she must know that she is the one that's caused her own kid's depression. Yet she is like fake being in that group, being like, oh, isn't it so sad that our children are in such a bad headspace? How do we change this? How do we you know, make things right? But she's the one that's doing that. It's just like, it's actually disgusting. So yeah, I mean, overall, I think she is just sick and twisted. I mean, yeah, at least you got a little bit of revenge back, but I don't know. I don't think it really compares to the childhood that you've had. Okay, now for our next Traumatize Them Back post. Be nice to your pharmacist. I lived in an area with lots of old folks. One day, I had to take my kid to pick up a prescription for her mum. As it happens, it must have been a busy day for the pharmacy. There was a pretty long line. I keep the kid in the shopping cart, do a few laps, get some groceries, and come back. The line's still pretty long, but I decide better to just wait it out this time. I'm behind this older couple, just trying to keep my toddler entertained. And as I do, I notice an old woman force her way to the front of the line from behind me. Now, I'd been waiting for a while, 10 to 15 minutes or so, and I'd moved up a few paces already, and I was supposed to be next. She makes it to the window and leans in against the plexiglass with her hand over the divider and starts snapping her fingers. What the heck is taking so long? I've been in line forever. False. The pharmacist, who is clearly frazzled and looking for somebody's who's been more patient prescription, turns and says, I'll be right with you. Well, I'm here right now, and I need my dang, insert obscure drug name, that I was supposed to take last night. Well, dang, it sounds like you should have planned better. The pharmacist assures her she'll be right there to help her. My kid and I stop what we are doing and watch as the woman turns from red to purple, waiting on bated breath for the unwarranted reaction that is sure to come. Somebody needs to get the F over here and help me. I need my dang drugs. This incompetent girl can't do her job. The woman who is working the drive-thru window turns, asks the car to wait a moment, Mind you, the drive-thru was just as long of a line, hence why we went inside in the first place. She comes over looking equally as frazzled as the other pharmacist. She calmly asks the lady to step to the next window. The lady sighs, pushes her cart over, and they begin going through the standard questions. The cashier leaves to go to her computer to look it up, all while the other girl is still trying to help the first couple. The old angry lady keeps ranting about how unacceptable this is, and "This never used to happen. This generation is lazy and inconsiderate." Speaking to nobody in particular, but oh, I was listening. The drive-thru lady comes back. "Sorry, Mum, we haven't received the order from the doctor. Until we get the prescription, we can't fill it. I'd be happy to call them when I can to try and expedite that, or you can call and see if they can send it over." The lady screams, "I'm not going anywhere until I get my frickin' pills." "Okay, I'll call them when I'm able to." She walks away. Now it's my turn at the register. I'd worked customer service for years. I still do as a server. Don't be rude. Pretty easy rule. I push my cart up. I look at the poor frazzled young girl behind the counter, and I turn to the angry woman. "Wow, it sounds like it's a pretty important prescription." "Yes, it is. I needed it yesterday. I could have taken it already, but..." I interrupt her and say, "Well, it's pretty insane to me that you're being so terrible to the people who are going to fill a bottle with what could be your life-saving medicine. I know I wouldn't be that brave." The look on her face. I turn to the cashier and I say very plainly, "Wow, she is terrible." I turn and she storms off. I pick up the prescription and carry on with my day. A good rule of thumb, be polite to the people who give you things you intend to ingest. I'm not saying it was gold by any means, but the quiet thank you from the cashier had me floating for the rest of the day. Okay, this is really good. I reckon that as you turned to this horrible woman, she definitely thought that you were going to completely side with her and just back her up and yeah, just say exactly what she's saying, that this is a joke, this generation is lazy, I need my pills now. But no, you just said the complete opposite to her face. And it needs more people like you doing that for her to stop being so entitled and horrible. And yeah, obviously, you know more than me. I've not worked in customer service, but you definitely made that woman's day. And I'm glad that you got some satisfaction out of helping her out as well. Now for our third story of this episode. My teacher wouldn't let me use the bathroom during a test, so I peed on her carpet. The title makes me sound like some super cool rebel engaging in some sweet malicious compliance. No. In fact, I was a shy little beanpole struggling with undiagnosed ADHD and a bladder condition. In 7th grade, my English teacher had a rule that if you didn't bring back your book, you couldn't take bathroom breaks. Let's ignore that having access to the bathroom is a right and not a privilege, okay? I was always a forgetful child. I've lost pencils, stuffed animals, jackets, glasses, and much more from a very young age. At the same time, I was also a kid who would wet their pants and bed all the time. Neither of these issues were properly addressed or diagnosed until I was in my 20s. Still don't really know what the bladder thing is at 28 years old. Needless to say, I did not do a great job of bringing my book in. During a test, I had the strong urge to go to the bathroom. At that point in time, my urges were accompanied by a leak that made it through to my pants and did not leave a lot of time to hold it. I walked over to her desk, keeping my skinny little thighs pressed together to hide the wet stain. When I asked to go to the bathroom, I was given a firm no. Now, I was a kid that followed rules religiously and was uncomfortable speaking up against authority figures, so I waddled back to my seat and tried to finish my test. There was a lot of squirming, thigh squeezing, hand pressing, and grimacing, but none of it stopped the inevitable. Not only did I massively wet my pants, but it filled the empty space of the plastic seat and dripped into a puddle that soaked into the carpet. I thank whatever deity is out there that there wasn't tile. The people around me would definitely have been able to hear it happen, and I probably would have burst out into some very ugly crying. Holding back tears, I raised a trembling hand and had to whisper that I had an accident. Her attitude did a complete 180-degree backflip. She started fumbling her words as she worked out a plan. I would hold onto my test at my desk and wait until the bell rang. The classroom would be empty for about 30 to 45 seconds between the English class walking out and her study hall kids walking in, so she could call my 8th period teacher and explain that I wouldn't be there. She would have the kid whose chair I drenched sit in a different seat, and I'd be able to ride it out until school was over. I sat through a silent study hall with a book planted in front of me while I battled the tears I wanted to cry. When it finally ended, she scurried off to my locker with my combination on a sticky note and came back with my gym clothes. She then stood guard outside the narrow window alongside the door while I changed. A janitor arrived before I left, so I had 2 people to shakily apologise to with very wet eyes. My mum told me that my teacher contacted her with some very emotional apologies and many promises to let me use the bathroom whenever I needed to. She apologised to me as well and generally was much kinder. She'd previously been pretty cold because of the aforementioned forgetfulness. At the time, this event didn't feel like a TraumatizeThemBack moment. I didn't start owning the issues I dealt with until my mid-20s, and now I actively embrace them. I'm very open with my partner about when I'm having particular symptoms and have advocated for myself medically to find solutions, admittedly only partial ones. It's horribly sad to think about how much I let embarrassment and shame dictate my life. It kept me from having sleepovers, made me miss field trips, and contributed significantly to my social anxiety. Looking back on this negative experience, however, makes me feel a bit satisfied that the person who actually should be ashamed, i.e. the person who disregarded someone else's needs, was clearly traumatized to a degree. And I certainly don't let people make me feel ashamed of my limitations anymore. Wow, you know what? Controversial opinion here, but I reckon that this teacher is actually a nice person, just from the way she reacted to this. Now, I know a lot of you are not going to agree with that, but that is genuinely what I'm getting from this. If she felt like she had to apologize to save her job, I don't think she would have apologized to you, OP, either. Yes, I understand that in the moment, she probably thought that she had to apologize to OP's parents in case they took it up higher, went to the headmaster or whatever, or headmistress, whatever. But I feel like she genuinely was really sorry that this happened and really ashamed. And I feel like she now probably won't do this again. And I also feel like, there are kids in school that do very often just forget their books or just don't bring them in on purpose. And she probably had come to this sort of solution as a way that may well have worked in the past, forcing kids to bring their books in as they're supposed to, or they can't go to the bathroom. Now, is it right? No, clearly not. But maybe it worked in the past to stop kids that were just trying to get out of working or learning. However, yeah, I don't know. You comment down below, guys. What do you reckon? Do you think I'm being a bit too naive here and she just got caught out and was covering her own back? I actually genuinely think, just from the way OP's described it, that she has been traumatized by this because she actually is a decent person. She just didn't realize how badly she got this wrong. Now, does this take away from the fact that this is a horrible thing to go through and would obviously cause trauma for OP? No, I'm not saying that for 1 second. So whatever my sort of interpretation of the facts is, the fact is, this was still a terribly traumatic thing that OP went through. But I don't know, that was just my overarching feeling. Let me know if you agree. I mean, no doubt about it, she has to just learn, or hopefully she did learn from this, that she needs to have more compassion to her students no matter what. Because, yeah, treating the bathroom as like a privilege is a really terrible thing to do as a teacher. So I'm not saying that that's not. But yeah, interested to hear your thoughts. I don't think that a lot of you are going to agree with me, but that's what it's all about, baby. Get your comments in down below. Sorry, I know I'm rambling here, but I remember in my schooling, in primary and secondary school, so both, which is, from the age of 4, maybe not in primary. I mean, I don't remember fully in early primary school, but say from the age of like roughly 9 to 18, or at least 16, we weren't allowed to go to the toilet during class very often at all. Only if you really, really insisted that you had to go, would you be allowed. And sometimes you wouldn't be allowed. The teacher would just say to hold it. Now, as we saw the story the other day, it is different, and it should always be different if you do have a medical condition. However, in this situation, you didn't explicitly say you had one because you didn't know and you were ashamed of it, etc. So I know that's a little bit up in the air, and that is just a real shame for you. But I remember in my schooling career, not being allowed to go to the toilet. That was like a school rule. And they just said you need to go between periods. That was it. So again, was that a bad thing? Was my school bad? No, it was very good. So I don't know. Again, I want to hear your thoughts. Get them in. Let's end this episode now. Get your comments in down below.